Hello and welcome to the Crowdfunder weekly webinar. My name's Jess and this is Sai.
Hello.
And we are going to run through how to crowdfund your great idea. As this is a weekly webinar, we wanted to tell you about a few great news items that have happened here at Crowdfunder this week. So I'm going to start by telling you that I'm really excited about our Christmas party that we're having tomorrow. One of our HQs is in Cornwall, so we've invited a lot of people in Cornwall to come along, say hello, find out about some exciting new roles that are going to be coming up at Crowdfunder, and also to have a beer, listen to some great music, and just say thank you to everyone down here in Cornwall for all their support over the last few years.
In other news, we have recently been doing a fundraise to allow us to grow. So over the last 3 years, Crowdfunder has worked with about 30,000 different projects. Over the next 3 years, we intend that number to be around 150,000. And to do that, we need to put some new resources, bring in some new people and get some new space. So over the past 5 weeks, we've been raising money on our sister company, Crowdcube. We have raised approximately 1.26 million so far. And that has about 6 days left on it. So if you are interested in learning more about becoming a shareholder in Crowdfunder and investing, you can become a shareholder from £10. It's very easy to do. We'd love you to be part of the movement that's being created in the UK. So head over to crowdcube.com/crowdfunder, 6 days left. So that's quite exciting. And secondly, or thirdly, we had on Jess's bit of news, we are launching a campaign with Gain in Plymouth. And Gain is an organisation, it's a network that supports businesses in the Southwest. They have put up £30,000 of match funding for disruptive, different, unique, innovative businesses in the Southwest. So if you are in Cornwall, Devon, the Isles of Scilly, or Somerset, and you're doing something a bit unique and you'd like to use crowdfunding to raise some money, there might be up to £3,000 of match funding available from Gain as part of a Gain 20 initiative. More information on that is crowdfunder.co.uk/Gain20.
That's exciting. Are you going to be one of the Gain 20 businesses? Anyone out there? Get in touch, go check it out. So I'm going to start off our actual presentation now on how to crowdfund. So bear with me 1 second whilst I swap out our screen so that you can see what we are seeing. So here we go. Right. Let's have a look to make sure I get to do this right. Full screen. There we go. Hopefully you can see this. So for those of you who are new to crowdfunding, we are all about turning your great ideas into reality and helping you to do that. So the way we help is by teaching people how to crowdfund. So today I'm going to give you an introduction to crowdfunding. Oh, it's not letting me. There we go. I'm going to scroll. I should be flipping, but I'm going to scroll. So just a little heads up on Crowdfunder. We are the UK's largest rewards-based crowdfunding site. We do other types of crowdfunding as well, but Sai will tell you a little bit about that in a moment. We've raised over 11 million now. I think we're nearer 12 million for projects across the UK. We've, as Sai said, helped over 30,000, I'm right? Yeah, 30,000 projects since we launched, and we have a pretty good success rate of about 42%, and that's through helping people like you guys. So Sai's going to tell us a little bit about the different types of crowdfunding. Over to you, Sai.
So crowdfunding's still a relatively new industry, and there's lots of news about crowdfunding that you might see all the time. And that's because there's 4 main streams of crowdfunding. They can often get confused with each other. So the first one that you might come across is called equity crowdfunding. That's what we're doing with our sister site, Crowdcube. So we're selling equity in return for a financial pledge from an investor. That's sort of like Dragon's Den style. The second that you might come across is called lending crowdfunding, also known as peer-to-peer crowdfunding, also known as debt crowdfunding, also known as mini bond crowdfunding. And that is very similar to somebody going to take a loan out from a bank, except for rather than the person giving the loan being one financial institution, the loan's made up of maybe 100 people all giving a certain amount of money. And in return for that money that they give you, you give that backer a interest payment. The third type of crowdfunding is community shares. That is where a community comes together to purchase a asset that can be used by the community. So when you pledge on a community share project, you are investing and you do own a part of whatever it is that's being purchased. But it differs to equity crowdfunding in that you should go into a community share offer knowing that it's unlikely you're ever going to receive any sort of financial return from owning a part of that asset. Some examples of that could be owning the local pub, so it could be a community owned and run pub. It could be a green space, perhaps a park or a piece of woodland which you want to protect. It could also be a wind turbine that's used by the community, or a football club. There's lots of different examples. That's something that we offer on Crowdfunder. So there is a community shares platform. If you're interested in learning more about that, then you can head over to crowdfunder.co.uk/campaigns/community shares, which is all one word. And the final type is rewards-based crowdfunding. That is what Crowdfunder specializes in. And if you want to run a crowdfunding project on Crowdfunder, then most likely it will be a rewards-based campaign. That's the one that we're going to go into a lot of detail in a minute. And in rewards-based crowdfunding, when somebody pledges you some money, you offer them a non-financial reward. So you could give them a product or a service that you're intending to offer if you're a business. You could set up an event and invite them to that, or maybe you could just give them something as simple as an acknowledgement of thanks. And so there are 4 different types of crowdfunding. I think Jess has got a pretty good example of what rewards-based crowdfunding actually entails and how it works in the real world.
Yeah, so this slide that you're hopefully seeing right now is about a guy called Phil. And Phil decided that he wanted to set up a bakery, not just any old bakery, a really community-led, community-driven and engaged bakery. It's pretty cool, but the banks, when Phil went and explained his idea, pretty much laughed him out the front door. They said, why should we give you any money when you're going up against the likes of Asda and Tesco's? Really sorry, but we just can't help you right now with any funding. So Phil decided to launch a crowdfunding campaign, and he definitely did the right thing, because by reaching out to the community that he wanted to serve with his bakery, he crowdfunded over £8,000. And what his community did for him was that they, instead of just pledging money, Phil had a series of rewards, and that's what's great about rewards-based crowdfunding. So any one of those people that pledged on Phil's campaign meant that they might have gotten bread in return, they might have had a bread making workshop, they might have been signed up to receive bread on their doorstep for a whole year. So the community definitely got something back out of it at the same time as supporting Phil. Over 140, well, actually not over, 114 people in Phil's community helped him launch his business through crowdfunding. So that just shows, and that's just one example of the thousands and thousands of case studies and exciting projects that we help here at Crowdfunder. There's one thing that I really want to get across to you guys. Crowdfunding is about so much more than money. Yeah, you get your funding when you raise money, but actually you also learn how to market your idea and your organization or the reason you're raising money. You learn how to use social networks, create a marketing plan, do a bit of PR. So that marketing will be key for you and your idea going forward, and it's what comes with crowdfunding. You also get validation, and this is my favorite part of crowdfunding. And it's because if you have an idea and you've got 100, 200, 300 or more people putting their money into your project in return for rewards, you're not getting just getting your money and great marketing value out of it. you're getting validation of your idea. So people are saying, yes, this is a brilliant idea. I definitely want it to happen. You obviously do get your money, you get your funding, which is pretty key to lots and lots of crowdfunders. And maybe the sweetest spot of all of it is that the people who pledge, the people who validate your idea, market your campaign with you, give you that funding, those people will be your advocates forevermore. So it's not just for your crowdfund. These people will support you and your project going forward because they've put a little bit of themselves into you, and they want to become a part of your company. So there you go. That's the benefits. And you might be going, well, this all sounds great, but how does it actually work? Well, on Crowdfunder, it's pretty simple, and there's a lot of advice out there to help you on your way. You start by adding your project. It's the most vital thing you can do at this stage. Go on to www.crowdfunder.co.uk and click Add Project. It's right at the top of the website. It should be really clear. Once you do that, you get into the system. You get tons of advice, loads of prompts, loads of support. And then once you've created that project, Si's going to go into some real detail on how you create a project in a moment. But once you've done that, you then share that idea with your crowd, your friends, your family, your community, anybody who might be interested, and they pledge their cash in return for rewards, which you will give out. And then your idea gets funded. So that is how it works. This is a project page. So to show you an example of, following on from how it works, and you can see there over on the right, excuse me, you've got it tells you how much money you've raised, how many backers you've got, and that's people who are supporting your project and placing money. And it also tells you how many days you've got left to raise the funds you need. That's actually, we've just revamped our project pages, so they're looking even more slick than the one that you can see on your page right now. But you also have the option to do flexi funding or all or nothing funding. And again, Si will tell you about that in a moment. Also, at the top of that page, you'll see that picture of that lovely blonde lady. That's actually a video, and videos are really key. So that's what you'll have at the top of your project page, hopefully. And then again, on the right, you'll have a list of rewards, which Si is shortly going to tell you about. Here you go, Si, off you go. Okay,
so if you are listening to this webinar, hopefully you have a pretty good understanding of what crowdfunding is. If you didn't, then I'm hoping that Jess has covered that quite eloquently. I'm going to go into a bit more detail about what makes a good crowdfunding project. We do lots of analysis on the projects that are successful and unsuccessful, and we've built a bit of a science as to how to ensure you've got the most chance possible of hitting your target. So there's 6 steps in the formula that we've laid out. You can see the number 1 to 6 there. That doesn't mean that you should do 1 first and 6 last, or number 2 is more important than number 4. But if you can try and cover all 4 of these things when you come to creating, launching and funding a crowdfunding project, then you should have the highest chance possible of being successful. I'm going to do something a little bit different this week. You will have access to this PowerPoint and all of the content that's on it. So I'm going to talk about things that aren't on the PowerPoint. If you have a pen and pencil, it might be a good idea to write down a few notes, because I'm going to be talking about sort of my top tip on each of the 6 steps. So if we start off with number 1, team, building a team. So the obvious reason why you build a team is on the PowerPoint, and that is because the more skills you have within the team, the more capabilities you can make use of, and the better things will get done. It will be done. So I'll leave that one alone. The real reason why I think building a team is important is down to when you launch your project, and it's down to getting a really high group of engaged people to pledge on your project at minute 0, so as soon as you possibly launch. I'm going to go into a bit more detail. So I know that if I was to launch a project, I could find 10 people in the world who would support my project as soon as I asked them to. not because they like my project or they think it's a particularly very good idea, but just because they like me. So I'm talking my mum and dad, my siblings, Nan, some of my best friends, a couple of the people that I work with. I know 10 people to do that. If you have 5 people in your team, and each of those 5 team members has 10 people who they can definitely get to pledge, then as soon as you launch, you will potentially have 50 people who are pledging on your project. And that's a really strong start. That's a very powerful start to have that many people engaging with, pledging on, and sharing your project from the very start. So that is the real reason behind why I build a team, aside from the obvious that the more skills, the better. Number 2, your stories. This is in 2 parts. Jess showed us a project page, and what you did see at the top was a video. What you didn't see below the video was a written description. And they're the 2 ways that you can get your story across to a potential backer. I'll start with the written description. So there's 3 things that you need to cover. One is what you want to achieve. The second one is who you are and what you're trying to do. And the third one is how you're going to use your funds. That's all on the PowerPoint. One thing that I will say about the written description, which I've seen quite a few times before, is try and make the text that you write as manageable as possible. So it's really important to cover those 3 key main points, but make sure they're not in one block of text. Make sure you split the text up into paragraphs and use subtitles and headings. If you can, and you have access to them, add images to break up the text. And make sure that people aren't forced to read through a whole huge long paragraph, which is quite scary for a lot of people to get through. In fact, most people won't even bother trying, just to find a little bit of information which they're after. So when you come to doing the written description, break it up, add pictures, make it unique, make it very manageable and easy to read. The second way that you can do your story or tell your story on a crowdfunding project is with a video. So the key points for a video for me are keep it really short, 90 seconds to 2 minutes. Make sure you get your face or somebody's face in front of the camera. Please do not do an image montage or a panning shot of the club that you want to redo or the green space that you are looking to purchase or the place where you're manufacturing your goods. Get someone in front of the camera because it creates a real emotional response with a potential backer, and it helps the potential backer to know that there are real people behind the project and this is not some sort of fraudulent project that might steal their money should they pledge on it. And the main tip that's not on the page for me is to make sure you make the video as professional as you possibly can. So if you have a video, we know that you're about 50% more likely to hit your target than if you were to launch a project without a video. It makes quite a big difference just having one there. But when you've got one there, try not to go down the amateur route. There's some people who might advise you to create a video with an iPhone, make it very, very low budget, and you'll unlock what they would call the sympathy pledge. People think that these guys really don't have any money and they need as much support as they can get. I would say that that's probably the wrong tact to do. So from our analysis of a crowdfunding page, the first button that everybody clicks when they come onto your project is the video. They click play straight away. So that's your first impression on that potential backer. And if you have a very amateur video, what that is saying to that potential backer is that you haven't potentially put a lot of effort into creating the video. And you haven't put a lot of effort into making a good first impression with me as someone who might back your project. If I have that, I instantly lose confidence in your ability to spend the money that I give you wisely and put as much effort into spending that money and making your project a reality as you have done with the crowdfunding project. So my top tip here is if you have the capacity to, make as high a quality video as you possibly can. It doesn't need to be documentary quality sort of 4K or anything like that. But give it some thought, give it some preparation. If you can, try and find a digital SLR or a decent camera and a microphone to use when you're recording it. So that's the story, written description and video. Identify your crowd. So the picture on the PowerPoint is showing a Venn diagram of 3 different audiences who you might potentially reach out to with your project and who might be interested in backing your project. That's a very good way of doing it. My top tip that's not on the page when you're identifying your crowd is not to do it in a Venn diagram. I prefer to do it in a big tree-shaped network map. So I start with me in the middle, and then I draw lots of lines out to as many different people that I think would be interested in pledging on my project. And so that could be those initial 10 friends and family that I spoke about when you're building your team. Then it could move on to people in the local area. Then it could move on to some of the local businesses that I know or other corporations. It could be associations that I'm part of. It could be work colleagues. It could be my Facebook page, my Twitter handle. There's lots of different areas that I think I could reach people that I know using the different channels. And what I would do is stick a number by each of those groups. So I know that I've got 500 people on Facebook and a couple thousand on Twitter. So I put that down. I know out of my best friends and family, I can get 10 people to pledge. I'd make sure I recorded all of the numbers of people that I think I can potentially reach. And this is where the real tip comes in. Once I know all of the people that I have access to and it's on one big page, I would then turn my attention to people who I think would be interested in backing my idea, but I don't currently have access to, and that forms the second part of the network map. So that could be, it might be people, it might be the same list of people, in that it could be local businesses who I don't know yet, but I know would be interested in supporting my project. It could be people international who I think would be interested in backing my project, but I have no way to access them. Make sure they all appear on the network map. That will become very important for a bit later on. So that's identifying your crowd. Once we know who we can drive to the page and we know who we want to or who we think would be interested in supporting the project, we then need to figure out what's going to incentivize them to pledge once they are on our project page. So there's a list of 5 on the PowerPoint that you can see. They generally fall into one of 4 categories: an experience, a product, a service, or an acknowledgement. Could also be a sponsorship as a 5th type of reward. One of the things that is not on the PowerPoint that I would suggest doing is having a really strong range of rewards. And when I say range, I'm talking about 2 different variations of ranges. So you need to make sure you have a reward in place for lots of different price points. Most people will start their reward packages off at £5, and that £5 will usually be just a simple thank you. And then they will step up their rewards in increasing amounts, so 5, 10, 20, 50, £100, £250, £500, £1,000, and then you can go higher and higher. The top reward needs to be at around 10% of your target figure. So if you're aiming to raise 5 grand, you need to have a top reward of about 500 quid. So having a good range there. The second way that you have a good range is to make sure that you're covering all of the different crowds that you've identified, all the different audiences that's in your network map. So if you have people who are international and you think might be interested in pledging on your project, make sure you have something that you can send internationally easily, and it's not going to cost a fortune. Similarly, if you know that most of the people who are going to pledge on your project are in the local area, make sure you have an event, because that will bring everyone together into the same place and increase engagement. So there's a couple top tips on rewards. Next are the 2 different ways of funding on Crowdfunder. You can either do it all or nothing or keep what you raise. They're fairly self-explanatory in their names. I would recommend wholeheartedly that you go for all or nothing. On average, projects raise 5 times more when they go on all or nothing than on keep what you raise. So in fact, unless you are a charity, although it's much lower risk, I would highly advise going against keep what you raise and keep it all or nothing. That means that setting a target becomes very important, because you want to make sure that you hit your target in order to have all of the money sent to you from the backers. There's a top tip on setting a target figure. We know that the average amount someone pledges on Crowdfunder is about 50 quid. So if you take your target figure, or a hypothetical target figure, and divide it by 50 quid, that gives you on average the number of backers that you'll need to achieve that target figure. If you then go back to the network map, which we've done, and you know that you have 10 people in your best friends and family audience group, and you've got 100 people in your ex-colleagues or colleagues group that you can send the project out to, you know that you've got 5,000 people in the local area you can reach, 500 on Facebook, 1,000 on Twitter, you quickly can get a picture of whether that target figure is going to be achievable. And what you want to do is make sure that your targets covers everything that you need to make the project happen once you've received the money, but also is a realistic and achievable number. So that's some of the funding options. How long should you run your project for? This is a U-shape which shows the plateau in the middle of a project that every project has. The optimum amount of time to run your project for is 4 weeks. And if I was going to be even more specific, I'd probably say 4 weeks or less. Any longer than that, and you run the risk that the plateau in the middle of your project is too long. It can become very difficult to dig yourself out of. How long should the project run for? Getting funded, we're going to go back to the network map. You start to see how important that identifying your crowd exercise is. So when we run a crowdfunding project, we want to reach out to the people that we know, and then we want to reach out to the people that we don't know, but hopefully have channels for by this time. For instance, if we wanted to reach out to the group of people in the local community, but we didn't know how to do that, before we run our project, we would talk to the local newspaper and see if they'll run an article for us. So we've got channels to the people that we don't know. What's really important is once those people have come onto the page and they hopefully have pledged, we get those guys to share with their own networks. And so that drives a whole new wave of people to the project and amplifies your initial crowd. After that, we want the new crowd that's come in to share it with their networks. And then those guys share it with their networks. And all of a sudden you end up reaching quite a large number of people. So building momentum into a crowdfunding project is really important. In terms of actually doing that and how you reach some of those people, there's a big list on the PowerPoint in front of you. If I was to pick a few which I think are really important, on the left-hand side, before you go live, I would pick up the phone and I would talk to people. I would make sure that those 10 friends and family know that the project's coming, and they know that it's coming on Friday at 10 a.m. in the morning, and they know that they have to pledge 50 quid because it's going to help me out loads. The best way to do that is either in person or getting them on the phone. And I have heard stories of people who have phoned up their mum or their dad or their grandparents or their brother or sister, and they haven't dropped the phone until they've seen the pledge come on. And if that's something that you have to do to make sure you get a few pledges in to get the ball rolling, then that's something that you should do. The launch event is very important. It's great to get lots of people in the room and engaged with what you're doing as soon as you launch it, when it's all very new and exciting. Make sure you have a way for them to pledge. So we're talking iPads, laptops, internet access in the building that you have the launch event at. And once you're live, social media and sharing online is a very powerful way of getting the message out to lots of people. It's very easy for someone to share a project online. It just takes a few clicks of a button. And that's one of the call to actions that you should be asking people to do, especially after they've pledged on your project. So when you do go live, you will have access to this dashboard, as well as a number of other stats as part of the Crowdfunder website and as part of your project page. No one else can see this, only you as the project owner. And it gives you an idea of how well you're doing against some of the averages on the crowdfunding, on the whole crowdfunding site. What I would do is keep an eye on it. If you're not doing something particularly well, head to the help section on Crowdfunder and it will explain a little bit more about how you could increase that conversion rate. So when you're live and funding, it's all about building momentum.
Do we have any advice on how to pitch this? And also, what type of rewards might work?
So just say it's 450.
450K, yeah.
So if we go back to the math that we just did on the target figure when you create a project, 450,000 divided by 50 is 9,000 backers, I think you need on average. So if you draw out your network map and you realize that you have access to 100,000 people who you think would be interested in pledging, and getting 9,000 of those people to pledge is not drastically unrealistic. If, however, you find in your network you have access to about 500 people, then you know that there's either you need to find a way to get those 500 people to pledge a lot more than the average amount of 50 quid, or you need to grow your networks and grow your channels so that you're reaching out to a lot more people. So I would say that 450,000 is a big number for rewards-based crowdfunding. We haven't done many up there. We've done quite a few six-figure projects, but not many that are 450,000. Just simply because you do need a lot of people to see your project. So I would advise either looking at your network map, if that seems like a scary number, or to pick out a part of the project which doesn't cost as much, maybe just a £10,000 part of that 450, just to get the ball rolling. You'll learn a lot from running your first project, even if it's much smaller than the whole amount that you need. But that's probably a good place to start. In terms of rewards, because it's based in Jamaica, it's going to be quite difficult. What you could do are things like having events that are based in the UK that all of the supporters of your CIC can come to and be part of. You can do things like naming the ambulances and some of the vehicles that you purchase out in Jamaica. And you can take lots of good pictures of someone, of the vans and stuff, and send it to the people who've backed you against that reward. So there's a few tips.
And yeah, on top of what Si said, I think it's worth thinking that 450K target is pretty huge. But what a lot of people do is they use crowdfunding as part of a funding package. So if you raise, say, let's just say 50K for ease, and then use that crowdfund as proof that people want this project to happen, they want it to go ahead, you've got a lot of support, and you take that to other funding bodies and go, look, all these people have supported this project. Now, can we use this as part of our funding application for more money to go and help those people? And I know that UK Aid have funds, and they put funds into projects from people working in the UK to help people abroad. So maybe something like that. I think UK Aid is the government arm of, and they put some money that they give out, but don't quote me on that. That might be a couple of months out of date. So yeah, I think that's really good advice. And I hope, Errol, that sort of answered your question. As we said before, you can come onto Twitter to talk to us at Crowdfunder UK. You can find us on Facebook, and obviously you've got the website. So that's us for today. We're going to wrap it up.
Great.
Go and grab some food, have a bit of lunch. And we hope that you've all enjoyed the webinar, and we will look forward to seeing all of your projects live on the site pretty soon. Thanks ever so much. Cheers,
Cool.
Em.